personal tag. Because they don't have any other choice. They have to be here. Left it there. Hare Krishna. I thought I had the other one. No, one more. Kṛṣṇa. Gita here. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janardan Yashodanandana Braja Janardan Yashodanandana Braja Janardan Yamunatira Yamuna Gira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Sira Jaya Radha Gopinata Radha Gopinata Sira Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radhe Jaya Lalita Visakha Lalita Visakha Lalita Visakha Jaya Lalita Visakha Jaya Kṛṣṇa Balaram Kṛṣṇa Balaram Kṛṣṇa Balaram Jaya Kṛṣṇa Balaram Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Shrimati Gopal Krishna Goswami Prabhupada Chaitanya Prakasham Tirja Pracharan Kirvashari Bhagavate Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jita-ātmanaḥ Shri Gurum Vaisnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Kṛṣṇa Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanditam Scha He Kṛṣṇa Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanisvari Visabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pabhanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jai Sri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashati Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we continue reading from the Bhagavad Gita as it is. This is the English part. We've heard from Sarvabhauma Prabhu that in Hindi you're doing the 3rd chapter. Text number 7 of the 6th chapter, Dhyana Yoga. Is that correct? Jita-ātmanaḥ praśāntasya Paramātmā samāhitaḥ śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu tathā mānāpamānayoḥ jita-ātmanaḥ praśāntasya Paramātmā samāhitaḥ śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu tathā mānāpamānayoḥ jita-ātmanaḥ praśāntasya Paramātmā samāhitaḥ śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu tathā mānāpamānayoḥ jita-ātmanaḥ praśāntasya Paramātmā samāhitaḥ śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu tathā mānāpamānayoḥ. Jita-ātmanaḥ parama-ātmā samāhitaḥ śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu jita-ātmanaḥ praśāntasya mānāpamānayoḥ. śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu tathā mānāpamānayoḥ. Māna praśāntasya Paramātmā samāhitaḥ. Matajis, jita-ātmanaḥ praśāntasya Paramātmā samāhitaḥ śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu tathā mānāpamānayoḥ. Jita-ātmanaḥ praśāntasya Paramātmā samāhitaḥ śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu tathā mānāpamānayoḥ. Jita-ātmanaḥ, of one who has conquered his mind. Praśāntasya, one who has attained tranquillity. By such control over the mind, Paramātmā, the Supersoul, samāhitaḥ, approached completely, śīta, in cold, uṣṇa, heat, sukha, happiness, duḥkheṣu, and distress, tathā, also, māna, in honor, apamānayoḥ, and dishonor. Purport, translation also by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. For one who has conquered the mind, the Supersoul is already reached, for he has attained tranquillity. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Please repeat after me. For one who has conquered the mind, the Supersoul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Purport. Actually, every living entity is intended to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as parama-ātmā. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities. Therefore, as soon as one's mind is controlled through one of the yoga systems, one should be considered to have already reached the destination. One has to abide by superior dictation. When one's mind is fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictation of the Supreme. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. The effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of the Paramātmā or Supersoul. Because this transcendental position is at once achieved by one who is in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. The devotee of the Lord is unaffected by the dualities of material existence, namely distress and happiness, cold and heat, etc. This state is practical samadhi, or absorption in the Supreme. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jita-ātmanaḥ praśāntasya Paramātmā samāhitaḥ śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu tathā mānāpamānayoḥ. For one who has conquered the mind, the Supersoul is already reached, for he has attained tranquillity. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. So from the previous verses, we've already been introduced to how the mind should be utilized properly in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Otherwise, from the 5th verse as well, it says that with the help of the mind, one should elevate oneself. Otherwise, the mind could be our greatest enemy. The mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. Even though the mind is part of our body, it is subtle. We do not see the mind. Subtle means it is there, just like the intelligence and the ego. Bumir apo nalobhayo kamano budir evacha ahankara itimaye dina prakriti astida. This material body, when we say that, oh, Prabhu, you're in the bodily platform. Have you heard of that before? Huh? Prabhu, you're in the bodily platform. That means he is in the mental platform. Mental platform because the mind is the center of the senses. It is the 6th sense. We have this gross body, earth, water, fire, and ether. Then the mind, intelligence, and ego. So one who has conquered the mind, the Supersoul is already reached. What does it mean that the Supersoul is already reached? Because the senses has to be controlled by the mind. Senses wants to enjoy the sense objects. When we see something new, we want that thing materially. Uncontrolled senses means one will be put in a situation that he will acquire more and more karma. We have to use our senses. In Kṛṣṇa consciousness, we dovetail our senses in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We don't say don't eat, but eat only Kṛṣṇa Prasad. We use the sense of sight to see the form of the Lord or His devotees or many, many holy places. Just like we are in Vrindavan. So we go to different places in Vrindavan to have darshan of the Lord. and his rasa-sthali, those places where the Supreme Lord performed his pastimes. Lila-sthali. We use the sense of touch by touching the Lord or his devotees. We use the sense of hearing, harikatha or bhajans. Bhajan means only for glorification of the Supreme Lord. There is no such thing as Shiva bhajan or Surya bhajan or Ganapati bhajan. When we say bhajan, means glorification of the Lord. We use the sense of smell by smelling the fragrant incense offered to the Lord or the flowers offered to the Lord. So in this way, by the mind, we'll be able to control the senses. And then how will we control the mind? Through intelligence, by cultivation of knowledge. That's why Prabhupada says that if we cultivate knowledge, it can destroy all of our sins accumulated in so many lifetimes. How do you control the intelligence? Yes, by acquiring knowledge. We'll be able to understand that we're not the body, we're spirit souls. We're all servants of Lord Kṛṣṇa, and we're meant to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this way, when the mind is controlled, then the Supersoul is already rich. Supersoul, one of the three aspects of the Supreme Absolute Truth. According to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Absolute Truth comprises of Brahman, Paramātmā, and Bhagavan. Brahman means the effulgence, the light emanating from the transcendental form of the Supreme Lord. And higher, because it's a gradation, a gradual process of understanding the Supreme Lord. The next is the Paramātmā, the localized aspect, who is present in everyone's heart and is present in every nook and corner of the entire material creation. Prabhupada says that Paramātmā is present within even an atom, or nowadays they have discovered what you call quarks. That is the same thing, atom. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's no such thing as quark, but atom was mentioned. And then, higher realization of the Supreme Lord is his Bhagavan feature. So, this Paramātmā within, when the senses are controlled, being used in the service of the Supreme Lord, and the mind is always thinking of Kṛṣṇa, Paramātmā will be able to be heard by the devotee. Do you have any experience of this? That sometimes, for those, even the materialist also, because the Paramātmā always wanted the living entity to go back home, back to Godhead. And Paramātmā travels with the soul in all the different forms that the Atma acquires, birth after birth. We've been a demigod before. We've been an ant before. We've been through all of these 8,400,000 species of life. And the Paramātmā is always there with the Atma. When the Atma or the Jiva or the soul transfers to another body after death. As we were talking this morning, Yamaraj will decide, will punish those who are fools and rascals, as Prabhupada says in the Bhagavatam this morning. The Atma carries along the subtle body, the mind, intelligence, and ego. It's not that because at the time of death we have to give up this gross body. We will not be able to carry this body with us. The soul will transfer to another form or species of life. But the mind and intelligence and ego will go along with the Atma. And along with the Atma, the Paramātmā also is there. Always giving directions. Please, Prabhupada gave an example. The Paramātmā is like, there are two birds sitting in a tree. And the Atma would like to enjoy the fruit of the tree, but the Paramātmā says, no, don't do it. Because that enjoyment means sense enjoyment, because that will put you into trouble. But the Atma says, no, I want to do it. I want to do it. Even though the Paramātmā says, no, 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 no. But then, okay, if you want to do it, fine. But you will be responsible for the result, the reaction. Sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times, we blame others if something wrong happened to us. Is that correct? Yeah, he says, no, 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 because of you, that's why I'm here. Or because of you, that's why I'm suffering. No. Nobody's fault except ourselves, because we chose to be in that situation. There are some instances also whereby we're be in trouble because of that is the reaction of our previous actions, and others became instrument for us to receive, whether we have to suffer or enjoy the result of our previous karma. So we cannot blame him also, or we cannot blame her for what's going on with me. That person only became an instrument for me to receive whether I have to suffer or enjoy the result of my activities from the past. So we cannot blame him, oh Prabhuji, or sometimes this happens to devotees. No, 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 Mataji, you're the cause. I hate you. I don't want to talk with you anymore. You are the cause. No. But if that person who became an instrument, his senses are controlled, his mind is fully peaceful, somebody else will do it to us. Somebody else will be the instrument for us to receive the karma that we are due to receive. So the mind, says here, is misled by the external illusory energy. And when that happens, we become entangled in this material world. This is the function of the mind. An uncontrolled mind cannot make proper decision. It will always be dictated by the senses. An uncontrolled mind will always put us into trouble. Do you have experience of that? Or you're all yogis? The perfect yogi means his mind is fully controlled, under control. But because a yogi has some aspiration, some desire for some siddhis or some power, mystic power, and therefore ultimately, the mind will also trick him. The only way how we can control the mind is to become Kṛṣṇa conscious. If one is working all day long for Kṛṣṇa, that means his mind is fully under control. If we give an inch to the mind for sense enjoyment, the mind will not give us an inch. The mind will give us a mile. This is the tricky part of the mind. You want a little bit for sense enjoyment, but the mind will say, no, keep going, no problem. There's no problem. But that little bit of sense enjoyment, the result is lifetimes after lifetimes of sufferings. That is the mind. So how we can control the mind? Prabhupada says, not possible to control the mind. The only way we can control the mind is to be engaged in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, to think of Kṛṣṇa 24 hours. But how can we think of Kṛṣṇa 24 hours? Is it possible? Prabhupada says, yes. Within a moment, you can do it. You don't have to wait lifetime after lifetime to think of Kṛṣṇa 24 hours a day. All we have to do is dovetail our consciousness into Kṛṣṇa consciousness. There are so many activities that one can do in order to control the mind. Just like in our movement, as you can see, the Matajis here making garlands. So why are they doing this? What is the purpose? To please Kṛṣṇa. We have book distributors. Why are they doing this? To please Kṛṣṇa. We have Prabhupada's accounts all day long. They're into numbers. Accounts means numbers, mathematics. But what they're doing this for? For Kṛṣṇa. We have the pujaris thinking of how to decorate, make Kṛṣṇa look more attractive for his pleasure, for the pleasure of Kṛṣṇa. So that is what you call, Prabhupada says, when you do that, and thinking of Kṛṣṇa, how to please him, that is what he called samadhi. Samadhi means absorption of one's mind in a particular subject matter. And our samadhi, the devotees, is to think of Kṛṣṇa for his pleasure. That is what he called samadhi. So when one controls his mind, the Supersoul is already reached. One cannot be happy if his mind is uncontrolled. Because it's chanchala. Mind means chanchala, flickering. Always keep on moving, not steady. It can only be steady when we dovetail the mind thinking of Kṛṣṇa. The materialists, their mind is turbulent. Always thinking of many, many plans how I can become happy. But it is always a failure. They are unsatisfied. But for the devotee, they're fully satisfied. Therefore, they are peaceful. And if you cannot be peaceful, there's no such thing as happiness. So Paramātma's feature, an external feature, is the spiritual master. The spiritual master is the external feature of the Paramātmā. In neophyte states like us, we're not be able to fully hear and follow the Paramātmā. Sometimes Paramātmā give us hint. This is what he called, sometimes we feel guilty if we do something wrong. And Paramātmā says, oh yes, don't do it. And then we still do it. Then we become guilty. Not all the time we can hear the Paramātmā, unless we are fully under control, our mind and the senses. So the spiritual master is there the external feature, and telling us, giving us direction, giving us guidance, giving us inspiration. The disciple who wants to go back home, back to Godhead, follows the instructions, the guidance, the direction of the spiritual master. And if we do that, even though it is against our will, sometimes the guru will tell us to do something that we don't want to do. But we have to do it anyways if we want to make progress in Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master will not give us instruction for which we are not be able to fulfill. Along with the instructions coming from the spiritual master, the blessings for that to be accomplished, the instruction is given along to the disciple. All we have to do is say yes. But sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times we don't want to do it. We're hesitating that if I do it, what's going to happen to me? What about my personal happiness? No, the disciple will follow the instruction coming from the spiritual master to please the spiritual master, to please Kṛṣṇa, not to please myself. If I want to please myself, then I don't need a guru. And that's the case of the materialists. They don't want to surrender unto the Supreme Lord because they don't want to give up their independence. They don't want to give up their sense of independence, which is the stumbling block for us to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. So for that person whose mind has been conquered, Arjuna was telling to Lord Kṛṣṇa that it's very difficult to control the mind. It's more difficult to control the raging wind. Who can control the wind? It's impossible practically. But more difficult to control is the mind. We can only control the mind again if we think of Kṛṣṇa, if we perform devotional service, and in Kali Yuga, the best way to control the mind is to chant Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One has to abide the dictation from the superior authority. Superior authority. If we always in the mood of trying to follow the dictations of the mind right now, we are gonna be in trouble. Big trouble. Mind is not so peaceful now. Many ways how the mind is putting us into trouble. So, as Prabhupada says here, one has to abide by superior dictation. When one's mind is fixed on the superior nature, that means the Supersoul or the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, the direct instructions, words coming from the Supreme Lord Himself. That's why we hear in the Bhagavad Gita, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Bhagavan, the feature of the Lord in His personal aspect. He has no alternative but to follow the dictation of the Supreme. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. And when one comes to the platform of Krishna consciousness, he is unaffected by heat and cold, honor and dishonor, fame or infamy, All of these are the same. It's like a person who's in Kṛṣṇa consciousness also. There is no difference between a pebble and a stone, or gold, pebble and gold. Because he sees things accordingly. If he sees something, he always wanted to dovetail this for Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Prabhupada says, you are not able to distinguish what is happiness if you are not able to experience sorrow. You'll not be able to distinguish what is heat if you don't know what is cold. But for a yogi, a perfect yogi, perfect mystic, a devotee of the Supreme Lord, everything is equal. He doesn't distinguish. So we have to come to that platform, hopefully in this lifetime, that we are not affected by all of this up and down, up and down. We should be in tranquillity. We should be in the mode that we are not affected by any of the material things that's gonna happen to us, or what is happening to us right now, or what happened to us in the past. Usually the tendency is we dwell in the past. Past is past. We cannot, as according to Chanakya Pandit, we cannot bring back the past. Even if you're ready to pay a boatload of gold, it's not possible. Past is past. Keep going. And whatever we're doing every day will decide our future. Actually, the future is now. Future means now. Whatever we're doing every day, guaranteed that that will be our future also. So for those of you who coming every day in the Bhagavad Gita and learning this Bhagavad Gita, this is very, very commendable, highly commendable, because one day we will achieve this knowledge that we are not this body, we're spirit souls. I'm meant to serve Lord Kṛṣṇa. I have to follow the dictations coming from Srila Prabhupada, the instructions from my spiritual master, wholeheartedly, not half-heartedly. So in this way, we'll be able to become absorbed in the Supreme, and that's what he calls samadhi. Later on in the chapter, we'll be hearing more and more about what is samadhi, especially in text 20 and to 23. I'm just going to read you this, because this is the perfection of one's performing devotional service. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This is what we do in Bhakti Yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. So happiness is within, not outside. We become happy when we serve Kṛṣṇa, because Kṛṣṇa is within, as Paramātmā. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. So ultimately, the senses become purified when we use the senses for the pleasure of Lord Kṛṣṇa and his devotees. Prabhupada gave an example, just like an iron, if you put into the fire, ultimately the iron will act like fire. So this body may be material now, but if I use this body, the gross and the subtle senses, into Kṛṣṇa consciousness, my body will not become any more material. And that's why when we hear that Srila Prabhupada's samadhi, usually the body of the acharyas, The sannyasis, those who are sadhus, at the time of death, their body will not be burned. Unlike for the general class, their body will be burned. So that because we're so attached to this body that at the time of death, we hover around. We still want to come back to the dead body. So to prevent that, and not anymore, no more coming back to the body, they burn the body. In India, anyways, in some places in the world, they bury the body, or in some places, they feed the body to the vultures. No more coming back. But in Prabhupada's Samadhi, Prabhupada resides in his Samadhi Mandir. That's why when we go there, we pray to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada actually is there. He can hear our prayers. That is what he called Samadhi Mandir. Some time ago, during the Goswami's time, 500 years ago, their bodies were burnt because of the fear that the Moguls will destroy their bodies. So their body is put into a samadhi with their ashes. But Srila Prabhupada is there. There's so many samadhi mandirs. If you go to Radha Golokananda, Radha Gokulananda temple, or in Radha Damodar temple, you've seen so many samadhis. So eternally, all of these acharyas or great personalities, Vaisnavas, they are there eternally. So when we go there, we offer our obeisances to them and we pray. We pray to them. Established thus, one never departs from truth, and upon gaining, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. That's why he called equiposed. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Free from the bodily conception of life, those whose mind is completely under control. They're not attached to material things. So we stop here. You have any points, any question? You have a mic? Any question? Or your mind is fully under control, right? There's no problem with your mind? Huh? Everyone is already reached the Supersoul? Right there, there's a question.
Thank you for very wonderful class. So I wanted to ask, you mentioned about surrendering to the spiritual master and having that faith that the spiritual master may not feel inspired to follow the spiritual master's instructions, but we have to have that faith that because it's coming from Kṛṣṇa ultimately and through the parama-ātmā,
yes,
we should follow it.
What's the question?
So I was wondering how to have that faith basically, because it's going to be difficult to accept sometimes. We may think, that instruction from the spiritual master is like too far-fetched for me, something I don't feel like I can do.
I already told the answer, that along with the instruction of the spiritual master, the blessings for you to accomplish the instruction is given. Have faith. We actually, our goal is to increase our faith day after day after day. The difference between the neophyte's faith and a person who is practicing Krishna consciousness, fixed, his faith is greater. The neophyte's faith can be shaken anytime, any moment. So how we can increase our faith? Follow the process as Prabhupada has given to us. How can we increase our faith if we don't chant our rounds? How can we increase our faith if we don't come for Mangal Arti? How can we increase our faith if we don't read Bhagavad Gita? How can we increase our faith if we don't serve the Vaishnavas? These are just like, this is like a complete package. You have to do all of this. Then our faith will become stronger and stronger. It cannot be shaken. It cannot be shaken, even by Katrina or by cyclones or tsunami. Right now our faith is very shallow. But we have to keep doing it. As Prabhupada says, it's possible in one lifetime. We don't have to we don't have to wait till the end of our life to be Krishna conscious. So everything depends on faith. If you don't have faith, then you will not be here. We all have faith on prasadam, right? Especially, there's a big feast, we have faith. But there is no, we have to understand also that prasadam is none different than Kṛṣṇa. That is mercy from Kṛṣṇa. So yes, our faith has to be increased day by day, every moment. Get rid of the tricky mind. The mind will not give us any peace until we become Krishna conscious. Any other points? Any other question? Yes. Till Burijan Prabhu comes. Bolo.
śītoṣṇa-sukha-duḥkheṣu, honor, dishonor, distress, unhappy.
Yes.
This meaning of it is very difficult to understand.
Did you hear the quotation this morning that I read? Were you there for Mangalartik? Who is there for Mangalartik this morning? Did you remember what I've read? There is no good or bad in this world. Everything is bad. Prabhupada says that because it is temporary. It is not false. It is real, but it is temporary. All of this thing is temporary. Today you're happy, tomorrow you'll be in sorrow. So a person who is in Krishna consciousness is fixed. This doesn't affect him at all. Honor and dishonor. You will be affected if you're in the false ego platform. There is no such thing as this thing, honor and dishonor, cold or heat. The yogis in the Himalayas, they're beyond the mind, beyond the ego. They perform austerities in the middle of summer. It's so hot in India. But they will put coal around to increase the awareness that they're not the body, that they're not the mind. They're beyond that. And in the middle of winter, January, February, they will go and have a deep in the Ganges. Even right now, you know, you go to Rishikesh, the water, Ganga, is very cold. But what to say of January? They're beyond the bodily platform. Okay? Huh? So we stop here. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.